Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, which is Beitzah Daf Hey. We begin on Daf Daled Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. It says the Gemara, Itma, we learned in the Beis Medrash. Shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah, an egg laid on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah has 2 days. Is this like an ordinary Yom Tov, which we learned yesterday? Yom Tov Sheni Shel Golius, where an egg laid on the first day is mutter on the second day, according to Rav's Shita, because really only 1 day is really Yom Tov. The reason why we observe 2 days is on account of the suffix, one certain as to when really Yom Tov is meant to be. So either way, 1 day is Kodesh, 1 day is Chol, and an egg laid on the first day can be consumed on the second day, Miman of Shach. Because if yesterday was Kodesh, fine, so it was Asr yesterday, today is no longer Yom Tov. If today is Yom Tov, then it's certainly okay because it was laid yesterday, when it was an ordinary weekday. So this was Shita's Rab yesterday. By 2 days Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz, it's only on account of an uncertainty. Really, only 1 day is Kodesh, the other day is Chol. This allows us to have the egg on the second day Yom Tov. But when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, says the Gemara, that's so different. Shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah. What about 2 days Rosh Hashanah? You have your egg laid on the first day. Can you have it on the second day? No. Rav Ushmuel, the Amri Tavayu, they both maintain that no, the bezeh, asura bezeh. The egg laid on the first day Rosh Hashanah cannot be eaten on the second day. Why? Says Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Asura bezeh, shehem vaday choik kavua. Listen to this. 2 days Rosh Hashanah is different than your typical 2-day Yom Tov Chutz La'aretz. Here it's an established halacha. Liyos kiyem arach midrabanan. Midrabanan, we consider the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah as one continuous zman, one continuous day. It's one Yom Tov. So although physically we have 2 days, but when it comes to the spiritual realm of the Yom Tov Rosh Hashanah, it's one big Yom Tov. We don't differentiate between one and the other. Shemetchila loy machmas safek hischilul asoisim, says Rashi, because it wasn't really necessarily based on a suffix, as we're going to see in the Gemara. In which case, both days are treated equally, equal kedusha. An egg laid on the first day is asur until the end of this continuous unit, until the end of the second day. Says the Gemara 2 lines from the bottom. Why? Why is that so? How do you get to this point? To consider 2 days Rosh Hashanah like a Yom Echad Aruch? This is not, listen to this mission. But Rosh Hashanah, initially, way back, Hayu Makablin Edus HaChodesh Kol HaYom. Bezdin would accept the testimony of the witnesses who came to testify that they saw the new moon. Let's say it's the 30th day of Elul, which can potentially be Rosh Hashanah. So we would listen to them whenever they came, in the morning, afternoon, night. Let's go down to Rashi again, 2 lines from the bottom. Kol Hayom. We would accept their testimony throughout the entire day. Which day? Yom Shleishim Shel Elul. On the 30th day of Elul, we would turn it into Rosh Hashanah. It would turn into Aleph Tishrei. Now, Rashi points out something important. Since they wouldn't really know whether or not the Eidim would arrive the next day, so the night before they would already begin observing a Yom Tov. They would stop doing Malacha at the beginning of the night preceding the 30th day of Elul. Perhaps tomorrow will become Rosh Hashanah. Which case the night is Yom Tov. They would anticipate, they would await the arrival of Eidim who would come tell them that they saw the new moon. So the whole day they would wait in anticipation. Whenever they show up, until nightfall, they would accept their edus and be mekadosh that day as Rosh Hashanah. So Isra Malacha certainly begins the night before, on account of the possibility that that night, the next day, would become Rosh Hashanah. So Rosh Hashanah, initially, way back in time, there was no deadline as per when to be makabel the edus. The entire day was okay. Continues the Gemara on the bottom line. You know what happened? Pamachas. It so happens that one time nishto ha'edim lavai, the edim delayed in their arrival. They came very late. They came after the Tamid Sheben Arba'im, in which case the Levim didn't know which shir to say. Is it Rosh Hashanah, which gets its own type of shir? Is it an ordinary weekday? Is it the 30th day of Elul, and we just sing the regular shir? They didn't know, and they sang the shir of a Yom Chayil. It turns out they were mistaken, because a minute later the Edom showed up, and now we would Mekadesh as Rosh Hashanah, as Rosh Chodesh, Yom Tov. So as a result of this confusion, they were masakin no more. Hiskinu shelo yehu mekablan es Edom el adam mincha. They instituted a deadline. Until mincha time, until Tamid Sheben Arba'im time, we accept the Edom. But after that, we ignore the Edom. So after the Tamid, after the Shira, it's over. You have to wait till tomorrow. Suppose Edom do arrive after mincha. So now we know with certainty that we're not going to establish today as Rosh Hashanah. It's only going to be tomorrow. Still, we wouldn't drop the Isra Malacha. We never do that, because once we start observing Yom Tov, we don't cancel in the middle. We don't create these zilzal. People will take Yom Tov lightly. So we continue we maintain the Isra Malacha until the end of the day and into tomorrow. Because really tomorrow will be the real Rosh Hashanah. You continue observing that day b'kedusha, to refrain from Malacha until the end of the day, and certainly tomorrow is observed as the real Rosh Hashanah, because then they'll accept the Eidos and establish it as Rosh Hashanah. So what does this have to do with the egg? Let's go with Rashi on the top line. It so happens that the Edom arrived very late. Instead of reciting the shir of Yom Tov, they did the weekday shir. They figured Edom won't show up anymore. Today's in a weekday. But when they arrived, it turns out that it was really Kodesh retroactively, and the shir was sung incorrectly. Asks Rashi, what about the morning shir? You have this issue every year. If the Edom arrived after Tamid Shel Shachar, after the weekday shir was sung, then you have the same concern. It was the wrong shir. Ubishal Shachar ain't tos. There's no mistake there. The Tamid Shel Shachar, afilu hugdash hachodesh koydem akrivasei, says Rashi Achidish, even if they should decide to consider the day as Rosh Hashanah even before the Tamid Shel Shachar, they would still sing the shir Shel Chayil. Shir Shachayil hayu oimrim levisha b'roiv hashanim ein ha'edom emarim lavi kol kach, because typically the Edom wouldn't come so early, so this was instituted as a set practice. In the morning they sing Shir Shachayil, but the shir of the Tamid Sheben Arba'im was pending. If it's Chayil, they sing Chayil. If it's Rosh Hashanah, they meant to sing Rosh Hashanah. In this case, they sang Chayil, and it turned out to be Rosh Hashanah. Taisus asks Akasha, why are you only worried about the shir? What happened to the Musaf? If it's Rosh Chodesh, if it's Rosh Hashanah, you meant to be makriv the Musaf on account of the occasion. So Taisus says, because technically, out of necessity, you could be makriv the Musaf even after the Tamid Sheben Arba'im. So they got around to that eventually. The concern is merely because of the shir, which was sung incorrectly. So what do they institute? A new takana, a deadline. Until mincha, we listen to you. After mincha, we ignore you. And we start again tomorrow. Ad ha-mincha, ad ha-kravas Tamid Sheben Arba'im, says Rashi. Aval achar mekam, but after the Tamid, oise hayayim harihu me'ubar. So today, the 30th day of Ad of Elul, gets annexed to last month. Umoinin miyam ha-machras, l'yom ha-kippurim v'sukkos. And the counting of the new month, Aleph Tishrei, Beis Tishrei, starts from tomorrow. V'imbo edim an ha-mincha l'malo, af al pi she'ein moinin l'mayadis. Now let's say the Edom arrive after mincha, in which case you know that you're going to start tomorrow. Right? You're going to start your count Aleph Tishrei tomorrow, like we just said. Still, says Rashi, we keep the Isra Malacha, loy mezalzelin and bei b'hai shloishim. We don't just drop the Isra Malacha. Well, it's not going to be Rosh Hashanah anyway. Let's just start doing Malacha until tomorrow. We don't do that. Kasher huzaru ad ha-mincha mimalacha. Kein noyagin v'goyin min oiseh b'kedushasei. This is a klal. We don't want to create this impression that kedusha is something to be taken lightly. Next year, people will say, "Well, remember last year we refrained from malacha, starting from the night. Then suddenly, middle of the day, come mincha time, there were no edom. We stopped doing. We started doing malacha again. We stopped. It's going to create a zilzal. So once they refrain from malacha, starting from the night before, just in case that day turns out to be Rosh Hashanah, once they start that practice, they continue it into the day, till the end of the day, even if it turns out that the Edom will not be listened to today. It's after Mincha, it's too late. No, we keep that Isser Malach. And we complete the day B'Kedusha, knowing full and well that really tomorrow is going to be Rosh Hashanah, tomorrow is going to be Aleph Tishrei. So what do we see? Alma, says Rashi, apparently, we have a totally new phenomenon here. It's not 2 days because of Suffolk. It's Vada. You're keeping 2 days Kedusha. Alma Tchilas Asiya Shnei Yamim Rosh Hashanah Afil Bebezn Hava V'lai Mis Suffolk. Unbelievable. There was a 2-day Yom Tov, not on account of uncertainties. Due to the above factors, we will keep 2 days Kedusha. Once you start Kedusha, we don't stop. They had to start because Shloshim Elul is potentially Rosh Hashanah, so you couldn't take chances. You have to stop Malacha the night before. If Edom arrive in the morning, then that day is Rosh Hashanah. But if Edom only arrive after Mincha, you know the next day will be Rosh Hashanah, but you still keep Kedusha. We don't want to stop the Kedusha right there. We don't want to create zilzal. So if that should happen, if that actually took place, what is the definition? How do you define this Kedusha today? Is it a suffix? No. It was instituted by Chazal to keep today and tomorrow. And they're both Kaddish. There's no suffix here. You know full and well that Yom Tov is when tomorrow. And still, they were masakin to continue and complete the first day B'Kedusha and go straight on to the second day B'Kedusha. Shema Mina, we learn from here. Choik chachamim mitzvasim. Hayala soisan bevo edem achar mincha. It was a choik, it was established as a set practice that if this should happen, meaning if Edom come after the deadline, we keep 2 days Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah. And that was even in Bezdin. For a choik, and certainly the ones living far away, they have to take that possibility into account. Yesh aleim lasoisan b'chol shana every year. They have to view Rosh Hashanah in this light. There's always that potential that perhaps the Edom will arrive after Mincha, in which case we have a 2-day Yom Tov. So we, who don't know what's going on in Bezdin, we're living far away. When we enter the 30th day of Elul B'Kedusha, we have to factor in that possibility. Shema Yevoyu Edom Achar Mincha, maybe Edom will arrive after Mincha. Varek Kedusha Sa'achatz, in which case you have one seal Kedusha permeating both days. So this is a chiddush that Rosh Hashanah has a 2-day Kedusha, a continuous 2-day Kedusha element within it. In Bezdin, and certainly far away from Bezdin, where they didn't know what's going on, and they had to account for that possibility. So when they started observing the first day of Rosh Hashanah, they were doing it with this mindset. It was established by the Chachamim to take into account this possibility and to give it an element of a continuous 2-day Kedusha, which is really one Kedusha Achas. You can't now view it as 1 day Chol, 1 day Kodesh. The Shem ain't kan Chol, because really, maybe there isn't even 1 day Chol. El Shneim Kodesh, they're both Kodesh. So we have to treat it as such. And therefore, when it comes to the egg, which was laid on the first day, it will be us on the second day as well. Right? We're speaking, let's say, in Chutz La'aretz. You have to keep 2 days, but it's not suffix related. Or at least there's a strong element, a strong reason to consider it one Kedusha. On account of that possibility that Edom will show up after Mincha, in which case it is one continuous Kedusha. It is Kadosh both days. So the egg which was laid on the first day is usher on the first and second day, until the end of that long day, so to speak, that unit, that continuous Rosh Hashanah entity which begins on the first and ends at the second. So that explains Rav Shmuel. And it's so different than your typical 2-day Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz, where one day is Kodesh and one day isn't. There's a straight out suffix there. Here, there's an element of Vadai, there's an element of Kedusha Achas to it. And therefore the egg remains Asr all throughout. But that was only when they had this deadline. Right? As we explained, the deadline precipitated this entire concept of Kedusha Achas. Right? Once again, because in the event that the Edom arrived after deadline, at this point we still keep Kedusha, knowing full well that tomorrow will be the Yom Tov. You're no longer listening to the Edom, and still Chacham will masaken to keep that Kedusha. So now we have a 2-day Yom Tov. Continues the Gemara, what happens after they've revoked, they cancel this deadline? What happens then? Go back to square one. The egg will be mutter. Says the Gemara 4 lines from the top. Amar Rabba, mita konas, Rabbi Yochanan mezaka ve'elach. After Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai revoked this deadline, he cancelled this restriction, because after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, there was no more need to present a deadline. There was no Levim, there was no Shira. We makabel the Eidos until nightfall. If that's the case, there's no longer a deadline. Beitzah muteris, the egg will be muter. This nan, Shachar Beis Hamikdash, after the Churban, Hiskin Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai, Sheyu makabel Eidos hachodesh kol hayom. We're going to listen to the Eidim the entire day. So in that case, one day is Kodesh, one day is Chayil, and the egg will be mutter on the second day. Why? Let's start again. Let's backtrack. Come the night of the 30th of El, we have to refrain from Malacha just in case the Eidim will show up tomorrow. To take that into consideration. It's a potential Yom Tov. So if the Eidim arrive in the morning, you know tomorrow's Yom Tov. The whole day was Yom Tov. If they arrive in the afternoon, or even in the evening, until Shatech Shach, until nightfall, that first day will be Rosh Hashanah. Let's say they don't arrive tomorrow, they come only the next day. So the next day is Yom Tov, and the first day was really Chayil. You kept it, you observed it because of Safek, but that's it. Only one day is really Kodesh. This entire concept of Kedusha Achas, that both days are Kodesh, that was only when they had that deadline instituted, as we explained earlier. All those factors came together to create that concept of Kedusha Achas, but when you don't have that deadline, then on whichever day they arrive, that's the Rosh Hashanah. The next day isn't. So now the egg will be mutter. The egg laid on the first day will be mutter on the second day. Why? The first day is Kodesh. The Eidim arrived on the first day. First day was Rosh Hashanah. You can have it on the second day, which is no longer Rosh Hashanah. If the Eidim failed to arrive on the first day, it came on the second day, then the egg laid on the first day is perfectly fine. It was laid on during a weekday. So this is Rabbi's Chiddush. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye responds to Rabbi. How could you say that? We have Rav and Shmuel both telling us Beitzah Asura. The egg is Asur. And they were living Bizman Hazeh after the Churban. Apparently that Isser stays. Amalei, Rabbi responds, what should I do? Aminalach Anna, Rabbi Yehuda Zakkai. I'm quoting Rabbi Yehuda Zakkai, who canceled that restriction, revoked that deadline, and therefore the Beitzah is muter. Va'at amrsli Rabbi Shmuel. You're challenging me from Rabbi Shmuel? I'm coming from a Tana. You can't ask me from an Amira. Okay, Ulu Rabbi Shmuel kashi masnisin. The bottom line is we have a kasha on Rabbi Shmuel from the Mishnah, which tells us that after the Churban there was no longer a deadline. So once we remove that deadline, we're back to Berishayna, to the original halacha, which is that really only one day is Kodesh, one day is Chayil, and the egg is mutter on the second day. So why do Rav Shmuel say that even Bezman Hazeh it's Asur? Like Kasha, the answer is, depends on your location. Halon. Rav Shmuel was speaking for us in Galus and Bavel. Valahu. The Mishnah, which tells us that after the Churban, there's no longer a deadline. And based on that, we learned that the egg is mutter. That's for people in Eretz Yisrael. What's the difference? So Rashi says that for those in Chutz La'aretz who always observe 2 days Yom Tov, so all throughout these stages in history, there were 3 stages. Berish Shoina, initially when they were makabel the Eidos the entire day, without any restrictions. There was the time when they set forth that deadline, and then after the Churban, when they canceled the deadline. So 3 stages in history, but all throughout those periods, in the Chutz La'aretz, they still kept 2 days. Why? Berish Shoina, initially they kept 2 days because of Safek. Will Eidim show up on the first day, and that day be Yom Tov? Will they show up on the second day, and that day will be Yom Tov? So living at a distance from Eretz Yisrael didn't provide that information, and they had to keep 2 days on account of Safek. Now, once they instituted that deadline, so those in Chutz La'aretz who kept 2 days now sort of upgraded their observance. It became a vadai, like we explained. Because when the deadline was there, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah had a din of Kedusha Achas, had that one continuous Kedusha element to it. And therefore explains the Gemara that even Bizman Hazeh, when that deadline was revoked, we don't change the gather of the 2 days. Once the 2 days have attained a gather of Kedusha Achas, we just keep it that way. Again, the concept always is we want to keep things consistent. To avoid any zilzal, people taking things lightly. Look, it's asr, it's mutter, back. I want to keep things steady and consistent. So since the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah have attained a vadai status, when? During the time when they had that deadline imposed. Therefore, even after it was removed, those in Chutz La'aretz who always kept 2 days, from day one till today, their 2 day Yom Tov acquired a status of Kedusha Achas and stays that way, even after the deadline was removed. But in Eretz Yisrael, so this is Rav Shmuel. Rav Shmuel speaking of Chutz La'aretz, and therefore they say even Bizman Hazeh, when there's no longer a deadline, the egg will still be asr because we treat it like Kedusha Achas. We just keep it that way. Whereas in Eretz Yisrael, and that was what Rabbi was speaking of. Rabbi said in Eretz Yisrael it's mutter, because in Eretz Yisrael it's different. They didn't necessarily keep 2 days. Right? Berish Shoina, let's say when they would accept the Eidos the entire day, there's no reason to keep 2 days. They started observing Yom Tov on the first day, just in case they'll show up today. If it turns out that they only showed up tomorrow, fine. So the first day was Chayil, and the second day was Kodesh. It wasn't necessarily a din to keep 2 days. They showed up the first day, so they had 1 day Yom Tov. It was all circumstantial. There's no din of keeping 2 days. So even after they imposed that deadline, which generated this 2 day Kedusha concept, even in Eretz Yisrael, that was only for the time being, temporarily. But once that got revoked, and now we accept Eidos the entire day, we're back to square one. And typically in Eretz Yisrael, they only keep 1 day. Especially after the Churban, when they were still establishing the Yom Tovim based on the testimony of the Eidos. So if the Eidim showed up on the first day, they only keep 1 day. There's no din to keep 2 days. So as long as that takana was there, the deadline takana, which created a 2 day situation, fine. So those 2 days were Kedusha Achas. But once that got revoked, we no longer really have a reason to keep the concept of Kedusha Achas in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore in Eretz Yisrael we treat it like a suffix. And even if it just so happened that they didn't show up the first day, they kept the first day missuffix, and really it's the second day, right? They didn't show up the next day, the second day was Yom Tov. So it turns out the first day was just a mistake. And certainly in the case where they come the first day, only keeping 1 day. There isn't even 2 days of Yom Tov. So in that case, in Eretz Yisrael, this whole concept is irrelevant. And therefore, when the egg was laid on the first day, even if it turns out that you didn't hear from Adam on the first day, you only heard Adam on the second day, in which case the second day was Yom Tov. But it turns out the first day was nothing. So the egg laid on the first day was a weekday. And certainly it's mutter. So that's the Chiddush of the Gemara. In Eretz Yisrael, we no longer have the din of Kedusha Achas once the deadline was revoked. But in Chutz La'aretz, we maintain that status. Because once it achieved the status of a Kedusha Achas, and the 2-day observance in Chutz La'aretz was straight throughout history, and once that 2-day observance got a din of Kedusha Achas, it stays that way. We want to keep it consistent and steady and absolute, and therefore the egg laid on the first day will remain asur throughout the second day as well. But in Eretz Yisrael, we have no concerns. Even if it ends up being Rosh Hashanah the second day, well, the first day is chayil, and the egg is mutter. Here comes a chiddush. Rabbi Yosef Omar says no. Even in Eretz Yisrael, the egg will remain asur on the second day. Af mitakanos Rabbi Yehuda Kessler ve'elach. Even after the takon of Yehuda Zakkai, who came along and removed the deadline. In which case, you don't really have the concept of a 2-day Yom Tov in Eretz Yisrael. Beitzah asura, the egg is still asur on the second day. My time and why? Havadav sheva minyan, because the isur applied to the egg was something which came about as a result of a count amongst the Chachamim and the Bezdin. It was a verdict issued by a group of Chachamim. And when that happens, you can't just revoke the Isser. You can't just cancel the Isser. You need an authority with comparable power, of equal authority, to go ahead and cancel the Isser. Anything which was established, any takana, any Isser, which was ruled upon by a minyan of Chachamim, Sorech minyan ha'achal atir, you need another group of Chachamim to come about and uproot it. Therefore, says Rabbi Yosef, even if the reason is no longer here. Remember, the reason why the Beitzah was asur and Eretz Yisrael on the second day was because of that concept of the deadline. You no longer have that reason here. The catalyst for the Isser is gone, but the Isser remains. Amar Rav Yosef, how do I know this concept? That once it's been established, you can't just uproot it unless you have someone of equal authority who will come and cancel it. It's going to be right from Psukim, the Chsiv. Leich Emer Lahem, Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, tell Klal Yisrael, Shuvu lechem laleichem, go back to your homes, engage in tashmish, even though you had to refrain, you had to separate from your wives in anticipation of Kabbalah Satir. So we see Hashem had to instruct them clearly, go back home. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to do that. Although, let's assume the reason why they had to separate was as part of Kabbalah Satir preparation. After Matan Torah, the reason no longer exists. Why does the Torah have to tell you, go back home? Apparently you need to issue a new allowance after the Issa was established. Even though the reason is gone, the Issa remains unless Hashem would express it clearly as Heter. Another raya, after the Shofar would blow, they can go up on the mountain on Har Sinai. Again, what's the point of telling us that? The Kedusha of Har Sinai was Matan Torah based. After Matan Torah, why not go up on the mountain? Apparently, the Issa would remain intact unless there was a special heter. Utnan, we have another Aifa Mishnah, Kerem Ravai. Here's a vineyard. It's the 4th year of the vineyard, called Kerem Ravai. The fruit have to be eaten in Yerushalayim. Or you can transfer the Kedusha, it could be paida on money, and take that money to Yerushalayim. There was a special takana to actually bring the fruit to Yerushalayim, to beautify the marketplaces of Yerushalayim. So if you lived within reasonable distance, within a day of Yerushalayim, Chacham instituted takana, bring it up to Yerushalayim, don't transfer it to money, bring the fruit to Yerushalayim. Kerem Ravai, the 4th year vineyard, fruit, Yerushalayim would have to be brought to Yerushalayim, Mahalachim Echad L'chol Tzad. If you're within a day to Yerushalayim, in either direction, Vizuhi Tchuma, these are the boundaries. Elas min Adorim, the city of Elas to the south, that's considered within a day's travel. V'akravas min Sof, and Akravas on the north. Lud min Amarav, Lud on the west. V'yard min Mizrach, Yard on the right. V'amar Ula, v'yithem Rabbi Barachana, Omar B'yechon. Matam, what's the reason for this takana? Kadei la'ater, Shuki Yerushalayim b'Peres, in order to adorn the marketplace of Yerushalayim with fresh fruit. Now, Betani, we learned in a Beitzah. The Kerem Ravai, Hoyloi the Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer lived after the Churban. He had this fruit. B'Mizrach Lud. Where was he situated? On the east the east of Lud. Now remember, Lud was the boundary. Which boundary? The Marav boundary, the west boundary. So he was between Lud and Yerushalayim. He was to the east of Lud. Mizrach Lud, but Saad on the side of Kfar Tabi. So he lived there, and he was within a day's travel to Yerushalayim. So he knew that he has to bring the grapes to Yerushalayim, but he found it burdensome. So what did he do? He wanted to give it to Hefker. Let Aniyim take care of it. Let them pick it and bring it to Yerushalayim, to avoid the trouble of bringing it up to Yerushalayim. Amrullah Talmid of his students told him like this: why bother? Why give up the fruit? Rebbe, kvar nimnu alecha chavirecha v'tiru. Your colleagues have already taken account amongst themselves, meaning they've come to consensus that it's mutter. Who are they? Man chavirecha, Rabbi Yehuda ben Zakkai. It was Rabbi Yehuda with his group, with his colleagues. And the reason is because after the Churban, what's the point of beautifying the city for the Goyim, Rashi says? So they were mevatel this chiv of bringing it to Yerushalayim. End quote. Okay. Says the Gemara, Tamad and Nimno. It's pretty clear that the only reason why he's exempt is because they've already taken count, they've issued a new halacha to cancel the chiv. Nimno. Apparently, if there wouldn't have been a new verdict issued by Rabbi Yehuda ben Zakkai to exempt people from bringing it up to Yerushalayim today, you couldn't just assume on your own that you're exempt. Even though misvara, what would you say? What's the point of the whole takana? To beautify Yerushalayim. Now we have Goyim there after the Churban. What's the point? No, we don't say that, because once a takana has been instituted, you can't just uproot it on your own without another authority coming along and canceling it. So this is Rav Yosef speaking. I have arrived from all these sources. They can't just uproot a takana automatically. And therefore, when it comes to the egg, even though the reason for the Isser is no longer present, because the deadline for the Edis was cancelled, but the egg remains Asr all throughout the 2 days Rosh Hashanah. Now, before we get back to that, let's just analyze Rabbi Yosef. Why do you have to bring a proof and another proof and another one? Mai va'omer. What's the second pasuk all about? Hachikam, he meant to say like this. Let's do it in phases. Let's go from one pasuk and see if it works, and off to the next pasuk and see if that works, etc. Hachikam. Michti. Let's take a look. Siv hayu nechonim l'shleishis yam. Klal Yisrael were told, listen, prepare yourself for this great event, which will take place in 3 days. Al tikshol isha, keep separate. So once the event was over, after Matan Torah, leich emer lahem, shuva lechem lo leichem. Lamali, why does the pasuk have to issue an allowance? Go back home, live normal family life. It's after the event. Of course, the restriction was a limited time restriction. What's the point of the new heter? Shma mino. We can learn from here. Kol davar shebeminyan, any halacha which was established, tzorech minyan achal atira. We need another authority to come and uproot it. So since Hashem told them to be purish min ha'isha, Hashem himself had to come back and reissue a heter. You need a comparable authority. Kaviyachal. Hashem was the only one who can do that, because he was the one who issued the issur to begin with. So we learn from here, Shema mino kol davar shebeminyan tzorech minyan achal atira. But it doesn't really work, says the Gemara, because perhaps you have no raya. V'chitem, you'll say, the mitzvahs oino da'asa. To allow them, of course they were mutter on their own, because the reason for the issur no longer was present. The point of the tziva here was to go back and engage in oina. Don't think, well, it became some superhuman being, Matan Torah elevated you to some high madrega. No, don't deprive your wives of oina. It was a mitzvah to do that. But the heter would have been automatic. So you have no raya from here to my concept. Tashmas, I'll bring you another raya. The Kedushas Har Sinai. When the shofar blows, they can go up on the mountain. There's no longer a Kedusha. Why does the pasuk have to tell you that? Isn't it self-understood? After the Kedusha dissipated, there's no longer a restriction. Let's take a look. Siv gam atzoin v'abakar al yiru el mul haharahu. All the animals shouldn't pasture on this mountain, and we assume el mul haharahu, while it has Kedusha. Rashi says, from the time of Matan Torah all the way until next year when they built the Mishkan, or maybe even afterwards when they started traveling, Esther and Be'ir, Suffolk and Rashi. In any case, during that time period, there was Kedusha. But once the Kedusha left the mountain, of course you can go up on the mountain. But why does the Pasuk have to specify that you're allowed to go on the mountain after the Kedusha? If the reason is no longer there, then the restriction automatically expires. Shema, we have arrived from here to this concept. Something which was established as a halacha, as an isser, we need another authority to come and uproot it. So you need a pasuk to spell it out. Yeah, you can go up on the mountain. So is this a raya? Perhaps, but perhaps you can challenge and say, maybe this only applies to an isser which was expressed by Hashem himself. Oh, then you need Hashem to undo it. But something which was established by the Rabbanan, perhaps, if it's a isser based on a certain precept, certain reason, when the reason is gone, the isser is gone. So how do you know it's not so? Tashma, I'll bring you another right to prove that point as well. Can Ravai. What about the vineyard there? That certainly was established by the Rabbanon, which the din that you have to actually bring the fruit up to Yerushalayim. And we assume it was only there to beautify Yerushalayim when the Mikdash was standing. After the Churban, let's assume there's no reason to bring the fruit back up. Then we see that his students tell him, right, Eliezer wanted to bring his fruit, and due to the tircha, he had to be mafkir. His students told him, look, don't worry about it. Your colleagues have already decided that it's mutter. Why do they have to make a special decision to be matter? Apparently, you need another authority to come along to be matter and isser, or exempt from a chiyuv, even though the reason no longer exists. So now we have a solid proof that even Isser Rabbanan has to undergo this procedure. And that explains the egg, says Rabbi Yosef. Even though the whole reason for the Isser on the egg was because of that deadline with the Edus, and that reason no longer exists after the Churban, the egg remains Asr. As far as the egg is concerned, the old Isser still applies. Later on the first day is Asr throughout both days. Continues Rav Yosef, but perhaps he'll challenge my assertion. Perhaps he'll say, Beitzah Nami, here as well by the egg, Imnu Allah Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai v'Sharyua. Perhaps there was a heter issued by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai when he said, let's cancel the deadline with the Edus. So that automatically was mata the egg on the second day. No, that's not true. Ki imnu Edus. The count that they took, the verdict that they issued, the takana that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai issued, was simply referring to the Edus, no longer a deadline. They never spoke about the egg. Imnu. There was no halacha regarding the egg, in which case the egg remains asr. This is Rabbi Yosef's shita, even Eretz Yisrael. The egg will remain asr. Once asr, always asr. Amali Abaye. Abaye challenges Rabbi Yosef. How can you say this? Whoever spoke about eggs? This is a takana. We no longer accept edus after mincha. Mela, it turns out that it became kedusha achas, as we explained earlier. There was no direct isra on eggs. Was there a minyan? Was there a consensus, a count, a halachic verdict issued on the egg? Beitzah be'edus tali milsin. The isra of the egg was dependent on the halach of the edus. Itzer edus, itzer beitzah. When there was a deadline imposed regarding edus, automatically the egg became masa. Yeah, but ishtri edus, once the deadline restriction regarding edus was revoked, we're back to square one. Ishtri beitzah, the egg automatically becomes mutter. The egg isn't an independent entity. There was no discussion regarding eggs in Bezdin. It was an edus discussion. So the halach of the egg is dependent on the edus. So of course the egg should be mutter today. If there would have been a discussion regarding eggs, so I could hear what you're saying. The egg became master, nobody was mattered. Discussion was pertaining to edus. We restrict edus. We give a deadline. and Mele became Kedusha Achas. Mele, the egg would be us. Okay. So the egg resulted from the deadline imposed on the Edus. But once the deadline was revoked, automatically the reason is gone and the Edus is mut, and the Beya is mut. Somebody disagreed with Rabbi Yosef. He says, Bisman Hazeh and Eretz Yisrael, an egg laid on the first day, we mutter on the second day. We no longer have the concept of Kedusha Achas. It's interesting to note, like just going back for a second to the concept of Tzorach Minyan Achal Atiru, when there was a halacha, Isser, Gzera established by a bezdin, by an authority, you need a comparable authority with equal power to go ahead and cancel that and nullify that. Says Tosfos, some wanted to bring a right from here. Let's say the community made a Gzera, a Cherem, a penalty of some sort, with a time, with a deadline, until Pesach. Some wanted to say that you can't be matrid after Pesach, because once the community established the Gzeir, Cher, and Isser, it remains throughout. And Tosfos disagrees. He says, no, absolutely not. It has nothing to do with our Gemara. When Hashem says, prepare for Matan Torah, Al Tikshu al Isha, there was no time limit given to it. Prepare for Matan Torah. We assume the reason is because of the occasion. But there was no explicit mentioning of days or time. Therefore, you have to have a heter afterwards. But when it comes to the Kehillah, they established a limited time Isser. They said until Pesach. Well, that was part of the Takana. It's only until Pesach. Afterwards, it expires. Of course, there's no concern. Now, the Meiri points out as well that there's a difference between different cases. He says, in a case where there was an Isser established based on a reason, and that reason is still here, still prevalent, you can still be mavatal takana. We find that the Gemara elsewhere speaks about the ability for a bigger bezdin, a bezdin which is gadol mimenu b'chachma b'minyan. They have a greater madrega of chachma than the previous bezdin, more talmidim. So it's a greater authority. They have the ability to undo a takana or an isser established by a previous bezdin of lower authority. So even when the reason is still there, they can undo it. Our Gemara, which speaks about an equal authority of equal proportion, having the ability to undo the takana, that's where the reason behind the takana no longer exists. Such as Yerushalayim b'churbana, what's the point of bringing fruit? Such as Prisha and Isha after Matan Torah, what's the point? So when the reason no longer exists, all you need is an equal authority, and that's enough. That's why the Gemara over here says that Davar sheba minyan tzorach minyan achal atira. You need another minyan of equal authority, of equal power. It doesn't have to be greater, because here we're speaking that the reason for the takana is no longer here. It's just a question of you don't have the ability to undo an isser. If you're a person of equal authority, a bezdin of equal authority, then you can go ahead and do that. Okay, getting back to the egg. For Rabbi Yosef had a chiddush, even in Eretz Yisrael, the egg remains us. Rav Ada and Rav Shalman, these two Amirayim, Tarvayu, they both hailed from this town, Mibei Kloiches. Amri, they also agreed in concept that the egg is usher, but for a different reason. Af mitakana Rabbi Yehuda Zakai ve'elach, even after the takana of Rabbi Yehuda Zakai, even after they removed the deadline for Kabbalah's Edus, Beitzah Asura, the egg remains usher. My time, or why? So they're going with a different approach. Nowadays, there's no reason for it to be us. But we're concerned about the future. My time. Meheri Yibana Beis Hamikdash. Be'ez Hashem, the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt speedily. V'yayim, people will say, look, Eshtakat last year, what happened? Before the Beis Hamikdash was rebuilt, and before they reintroduced the deadline, right? When the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt, they'll have to reestablish the deadline for the Eidos. And it will turn into Kedusha Achas. At that point, people will confuse things. They'll say, 1 second, last year the egg was mutter, because there was no deadline in Gullus. And they'll extend that heter to nowadays as well, to after the Binyan HaMikdash, when they have already reimposed the restriction, they have already reintroduced the deadline of the Eidos, and the egg will be awesome because Kedusha Achas, they won't differentiate. Look, last year, didn't we have the egg on the second day of Rosh Hashanah? Because then it was only a suffix. Because then we didn't have this deadline Even nowadays, after the binyan, when they reimpose the deadline, we'll continue eating on the second day. They won't realize they're stuck at last year's Shtei Kedusha saying. The two separate Kedushas. One of them was Chayil. But nowadays it's one Kedusha, because after they reintroduced the deadline for the Kabbalah Seides, you have a situation where the Edom will come after deadline, and you'll still keep 2 days Yom Tov. It's one continuous Kedusha, and the egg will be Aser. So on account of that possibility, let's just keep the Isser all throughout Golas. Says if that's the case, then nowadays, meaning after the Churban, there was still a point in time, some Mepharshim say, until Abai Rava's time, they would still establish the months based on the sighting of the new moon. There would be Makabal Eidus. So says the Gemara, if you're afraid about confusion, then let's just keep the deadline intact. Why do we say after the Churban we revoke the deadline? We're not concerned about the Shira, the Levium. Let's just keep it in place. My time and why? For the same reason. Mary b'nei Beis Hamikdash. V'yomru eshtakad miloi kibalnu edesh hachodesh kol hayom. They'll say after the Mikdash was rebuilt, well, last year we accepted the Edis the entire day. We had no deadlines because there was no Edis, there was no Shiras Halavim. So we accepted the Edis kol yom kulo yahashta nami. Even after the binyan nikabel, we'll still accept the Edis, and then we'll have trouble. So the same reason applied to the Beitzah will apply to the Edis. Why do we change things after the Churban? Let's just keep things consistent. How could you compare? There's a big difference between eating eggs and accepting Edus. Some by the Edus. Edus Mesur LeBezdin. Who deals with the Edus? The Bezdin. They'll know. Well, it's a new era. Baruch Hashem, B'nei Beis Hamikdash. Of course, we have to reimpose the deadline so that we don't confuse the Levim with the Shira. They'll know how to do that. And therefore there's no concern of confusion. So nowadays, we revoke the deadline, but certainly it will be reintroduced when the Bigdash will be rebuilt. As opposed to the Beitzah, L'kol Masur, it's something which is granted to all. Everybody deals with eggs. Not everybody is fully proficient with the intricacies of these halachas and Maseches Beitzah, complicated halachas. So perhaps there's room for confusion. Therefore, say Rav Adar of Shalman from the town of Blei Kloiches, even Bezman Hazeh, let's just keep the Isser applied to the egg. Rav Amari comes with a third malach. Also, in agreement with the other shittas, that even after the Churban, let's keep the Isser on the egg. For a different reason. Af mitakonas, Rabban Yochanan Mezake ve'elach, even after the takana. Which takana? To allow accepting the Eidos the entire day, we cancel that deadline. Still, Beitzah Asura, the egg remains Asur. You know why? Rava takes it a step further. He says, once we considered the 2 days Yom Tov as one Kedusha, let's just keep it that way. Let's just keep Isurim and Halachas straight, consistent, untouched. That's the general attitude when it comes to Isurim. We don't want to create this impression that Isurim fluctuate. People might take things lightly. And just as Bizman and Bidash, when they had a deadline for those Eidos, we considered both days Rosh Hashanah as one Kedusha, it's going to stay that way throughout Golas. And therefore the egg is also. Miloi Moida, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Wouldn't Rabbi Yehuda agree? Even if Edom show up after Mincha, we accept their Eidos. Right? Once we cancel the deadline, we accept them. But still, when it comes to Kedusha, it's unchanged. We view 2 days Rosh Hashanah just as we did before. We treat both days with equal Kedusha. And therefore, the egg is us. Let's just finish the next line of the Gemara. What's the halacha l'maisa? V'amar Rava. Hilchas hakavasei de Rav. The halacha follows Rav's shita b'hanei klas, pertaining to these 3 discussions. Which 3 discussions? Okay, we have to jog our memory a bit. Back in Dalet, we had a shaila regarding an egg laid on Shabbos, which preceded Yom Tov. Can it be eaten the following day, Sunday Yom Tov? Rav says no, because of hachana. It was laid on Shabbos, produced on a Yom Kaddish. It can't be eaten on Yom Tov. Yom Tov meals have to be prepared during the weekdays. That was Rav Shita there. We have Rav again on Dalet Amud Beis. Shnei Yom Tovim Shel Golius. A 2 day Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz. Rav applied a kula, because 1 day is really a weekday. So later on the first day can be eaten on the second day, and we have Rav today. 2 days of Shana is very different. At least in Chutz La'aretz. It's Kedusha Achas. And therefore, the egg laid on the first day is Asur all throughout both days. The Rav, the halacha follows Rav Shita, Bahane Tlas, on all three occasions. Ben the Kula, Ben the Chumrah, whether it results in a Kula or a Chumrah. So in the first and third cases, it's a Chumrah. In the second case, it's a Kula. It's always like Rav. Okay, so in summary, what did we learn today? Spoke about an egg. B'yom Tov Sheni Shel Rosh Hashanah. Laid on the first day, can it be eaten on the second day of Rosh Hashanah? We have three points in history that we're going to discuss. Barishayna, initially, way back in time, the second day was merely on account of Suffolk. So if the Eidim didn't arrive on the first day, they would move on to the second day. Hopefully the Eidim arrive on that day. It becomes Rosh Hashanah. In which case it will turn out the first day wasn't really Rosh Hashanah, so it's really one or the other. So the egg laid on the first day can be eaten on the second day. After they instituted the deadline, the Masakin, to no longer be Makabel Eidim after Mincha, at that point the wheels turned. It became a Kedusha Achas. And therefore the egg will be Asr throughout both days. What happens after the Churban Beis HaMikdash? Now it gets complicated. So in Chutz La'aretz, since they always keep 2 days, and at one point the 2 days attained the status of Kedusha Achas, it stays that way. As Rav and Shmuel both tell us, the egg in Chutz La'aretz is Asr all throughout both days. We treat it like one Kedusha. What happens in Eretz Yisrael and Machlokes? According to Rabbah, over there it's only Suffolk. So it's either the first day or the second day. The egg will be mutter Miman of Shech on the second day. We have three Shittas who disagreed. Rav Yosef, who says no. Even though the reason for Kedusha Achas is no longer here, because the deadline for Kabbalas Edis no longer exists. But once the egg became Asr, you need a power of equal authority to be martyred, and that never happened. Rav Ada and Rav Shalman learned. True, there's no reason to make it Asr today. But we're concerned about Meheri Bana Beis HaMikdash, and they'll continue eating the egg on the second day. To avoid confusion, we say even nowadays it's Asr. Rav gave a different reason. Even after they revoked the deadline regarding the Edis, but as far as Kedusha, we want to just keep it the way it is. Both days have Kedusha Achas, in which case the egg is Asr, all throughout the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. We also touched upon the concept of Davar Shebeminyan, something which was Nesar, by way of consensus, and whether it's D'Oraisa or D'Rabbanan, and even if the reason is no longer in existence, we need a power of equal authority to go ahead and to cancel that din. And as we explained the name of the Meiri, if the reason is still there, then you need a greater power, Gadol B'Chachma B'Minyan, to undo it. If the reason no longer exists, then as long as you have a minyan acher of comparable authority, comparable ability, who come around and are mated their Isser, only then when we say the Isser is no longer here. Kol tov to you and much, much hatzlacha.